Good morning. Welcome to our Neighborhood Housing and Development Subcommittee meeting. We'll have a little bit of a different meeting today. We are going to have a meeting of the subcommittee, but then convene a full meeting of the City Council for an agenda items later on, including medical marijuana that were of interest to many members of the City Council and many other of our colleagues wanted to attend. So I'm joined today by Councilwoman Pastor, who represents the Grammy Award-winning Phoenix Chorale. A wonderful credit to our city yesterday that they have won yet another Grammy. And Vice Mayor Valenzuela, who represents many members of the chorale, but not the chorale itself. Great news for our city. Councilman Sal DiCiccio is joining us by phone. Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning.
We have a call to the public and no cards for that, so I would entertain a motion to approve the subcommittee meeting minutes from April 19.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We have some information in the City Council packet on a variety of important topics, including the city's efforts on homelessness, and we have a consent agenda today. Does anyone have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda passes. Next, we move on to item number 9, which is an update from the Planning and Development Department. We have good news in this update. The economy has been growing. People have been very interested in coming to our city, and we are looking forward to making investments in the planning department to help them support the activity of these job-creating developments. So good news that people are wanting to invest in our city. And we've heard a lot from a variety of partners, including the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, that they'd really like to see us make investments to make sure we are moving as quickly as possible to welcome folks. So we have our planning director, Alan Stevenson, here with some good news.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'm here with Mo Glancy, the Acting Assistant Director for the Planning and Development Department. As you noted, this is a feel-good story here. We are asking for 19 additional positions to be added to the Planning and Development Department, all paid for out of the special revenue fund of our permits and plan review fees. No general fund monies are involved in this, and it's really as a result of the increase in economic activity that we're seeing in construction. So as the economy's come back around, we are seeing, of course, excellent customer service has always been there, having predictable requirements. A couple other things that we're seeing is increased coordination requirements and compressed schedules. The development community, because of some tighter lending requirements, are really pushing on project timelines like never before, and having this additional staff will help with that, as well as increased coordination amongst other jurisdictions. It's no longer acceptable to really say, well, that's a Maricopa County Flood Control District issue. You got to go work it out with them. The city ends up getting involved in a lot of those things more to try and facilitate projects and moving things forward. As noted, this is really it's an overall increase into our base staff. We're also doing things like innovation and efficiency improvements, where we're leading the way in things like our self-certification process, the use of smartphones by inspectors. We're also increasing our on-call contracts and plan review inspections and administrations. So the base staff is just one component to this overall comprehensive strategy to provide services. So you see on the contract staff here, we've been increasing that over the years since 2012. So we're right around $3.5 million this fiscal year. With that, I'm going to have Mo Glancy talk about some of our uptick in permit activity, just to show you a few numbers real quick, and they'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, the first slide I'd like to show is it measures our two probably best measures of activity, which is permits and valuation. And you can see they really dropped in the recession, but they steadily increased since about 2010. And for reference, we're back up to about where we were in 2006-07 for permit valuations, and we've got about half the staff. The next slide is development center customers, and you can see it's been a pretty steady 5% increase in customers at our development center over the last 6 or 7 years. Unfortunately, our turnaround times are getting a little bit longer. Our wait times are up to about an average of 15 minutes, and we'd like to be able to bring those back down. And all of these projections are based on the first 6 months of this fiscal year. The next slide is site plans, preliminary and pre-application site plans. These are the best indicators of future work for our department. You can see that that's been a steady increase on those as well, and they're up about 25% year over year. Our next slide is single-family permits, and you've seen a lot in the news, I'm sure, about the whole valley is seeing an increase in single-family permits. We're up about 38% year over year, and it matches about the 40% that the valley is seeing. This next slide sort of shows our residential plan review that has gone up in addition to single-family. We're also seeing a lot bigger remodels and additions, and so the plans are a little more complex. The blip that you see in 1314 is when we adopt a new building code, we have to update all of the residential standards for all of our builders, and so that creates an additional workload. Residential inspections coincidentally have gone up with the residential plan reviews and permits. In the last year, it's been an even greater spike. To give you a little reference on staffing here, we've got 18 inspectors, and we're also using 6 contract inspectors to try to keep up, in addition to all the things that we've done to be more efficient. Civil plan review is another area where you can see the plans have gone up faster than we've added staff. Again, these are more complex. We're starting to see larger subdivisions again, and even the infill subdivisions are a little bit more complex than a regular subdivision. You've got to fit that in with the neighborhood, and so it takes a little bit more work. So the impact that we've seen, our turnaround times are up a little bit. As Alan mentioned, we really reduced those turnaround times during the recession to try to attract business. And we're starting to see as the activity is going up, our times are going up. And so we'd like to keep those times low. We're also asking for some staff to help with oversight of our contract. Here are the staff we're looking for. It's 19 positions, really focused in the areas where we're seeing the greatest activity: residential plan review and inspections, civil plan review, site plans, counter staff, and some administrative support. So with that, we'd like to request that you recommend approval to City Council, and we can take any questions.
Wonderful. This council is committed to making Phoenix a great place to do business, and this will help us achieve that goal. We'll still be leaner than we were in pre-recession times, but I think it's important that we make these investments and bring in educated individuals to our workforce who can help us process plans, make sure we have good, safe development that occurs on a good, responsible time schedule. And so I look forward to supporting this motion. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a quick one too. I want to congratulate Mo and Alan for the work that they've done to put this thing together. What they've done is they've really targeted those individuals for those specific places where we need people to be at, based on what's happening in the economy. If you go back by 15 years, they would just hire just to hire. But what they've done here is they've really done a very good job of targeting. I'm going to fully support what it is that they're doing here and the hiring of these new individuals.
Wonderful. And this builds on a record we already have of including more online submittals, so that we've saved hundreds of trips to City Hall, reducing gas mileage and making life a little bit easier for our business partners. So with that, would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to move this forward, accept staff recommendation.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Excellent.
Great.
Go out and bring us some good jobs. With that, we will move to convening a special meeting of the Phoenix City Council. I want to welcome my colleagues from other subcommittees who will be joining us here today. Joined by Councilman Gates, who's been very active on working on these issues, Councilman Michael Nowakowski, who has also been very active on these issues. So we are now going to convene a special meeting of the City Council to allow members of the City Council who are not members of the subcommittee to be present and participate in the discussion only on item 10, or on a few items of the subcommittee agenda. Following those items, we will adjourn the special meeting, and the subcommittee will then consider possible action on the items, although not on all of these items. The full City Council will not be voting at this meeting. I call the special meeting of the City Council to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio.
Here.
Councilwoman Gallego.
Here.
Councilman Gates.
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Here.
Councilman Waring. Councilwoman Williams. Vice Mayor Valenzuela.
Here.
Mayor Stamp.
Excellent. We will now proceed to item number 10, request to amend zoning ordinance.
Chairwoman Gallego, members of the special subcommittee or special city council meeting. This request is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to strengthen our tobacco-oriented retailer requirements. As you recall, back in 2012, this text amendment was passed to increase, to establish spacing requirements both from another tobacco-oriented retailer, that's a 500-foot spacing requirement, as well as from a 500-foot spacing requirement from schools. Since that time, there's been a little bit of feedback related to that from the community, and staff brings forward this text amendment to strengthen those requirements. I have Sandy Hoffman here who's going to walk us through some of that, and I also have Teresa Hillner here in case there's any questions.
Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. The need to have the electronic nicotine delivery system added to the tobacco-oriented retailers is one of the main reasons why we're doing this text amendment. And we refer to those as e-cigarettes, so that's the common term used. So what we want to do and what we're doing with this text amendment is we are increasing the separation required for tobacco-oriented retailers from schools, parks, and daycare facilities, because right now it's 500 feet and we'll be at 1,320 feet. We're also adding public recreation centers to that spacing requirement as well. So again, to protect the other users from that. One of the other things that we're doing is the space that is allowed to have these type of tobacco-oriented products is going to be reduced from 15% to 5%. So if they have 5% or less, then they don't have to meet the spacing, but any more than that, they will meet the threshold of having to do that. And another cleanup thing we're doing is right now in the zoning ordinance, we have a provision for ensuring that buildings are separated by 6 feet. Well, we have that covered in the building code. So this is a redundancy, and we felt that it was better to move it out of the zoning ordinance and keep it in the building code where it needs to be. This text amendment went through all the village planning committees except for 2. One of them did not have a quorum, and one we are scheduled to see right before we go to city council in March. And we would request that the Neighborhood Housing and Development Subcommittee please recommend approval of this text amendment.
Wonderful. Thank you for your work on that item and for all of our Village Planning Commission and Planning Commissioner members for consulting with us. Do we have any questions from council members? Councilman Gates.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to attend as a full city council meeting. As you mentioned, it's an important issue in all of our districts, but I've had a lot of concern in my district about this in various areas, and so thank you for this opportunity. I also want to thank Vice Mayor Valenzuela for his leadership on this issue as well, and ask that and asking that these restrictions be strengthened. A couple questions for you. One about the public recreation center. How is that defined?
So, Chairwoman Gallego, Councilman Gates, that is defined based upon our community centers that are mapped that the city actually owns and manages. One of the challenges that we face with these types of spacing requirements is we have to know where the facilities are, because we're still responsible as the government entity to provide clear legal direction to businesses on where they can locate. And so whenever we have these discussions about spacing requirements, it's most practical for staff's perspective if we know where those are at to provide that clear direction. And so that's why that was chosen.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that clarification. Alan, you and I have talked about our concerns with lots of youth-oriented activities in my district, especially along North 32nd Corridor with karate, places and swim schools and gymnastic centers, where we have that one on 32nd Street in Thunderbird, which just opened, which, by the way, they said they weren't going to be a smoke shop. So I had real concerns about that, and I pushed you on this issue. And you've told me that we just do not have the basis to add that to the ordinance. Is that correct?
Councilman Gates, yes, that is correct. I believe if we brought that forward and had spacing requirements for karate schools or dance academies, those types of things, albeit they are things that sometimes cater to youth. We don't know where they're located, and it's difficult to get that information. And the concern is that if staff, as part of someone doing due diligence to open up one of these facilities, opens up, the city would say, yes, it's okay. The department would issue them a certificate of occupancy. They would sign a lease. And then later on, someone would come back and say, well, around the corner, here's a karate school that focuses on kids in the afternoons from 3 to 6, and therefore you can't be there. And that would open up the city to some risk claims, because we did give them a permit because we thought they met the requirements, simply because we weren't aware of all those facilities.
Okay, well, Madam Chair, I didn't like that answer, but I'll respect the direction that we're getting from the legal department. But one thing that I would like to raise is churches. In the instance of liquor licenses, we have spacing requirements from churches, and would be interested in seeing if that would be an additional spacing requirement that we could add on the smoke shops. And by the way, too, for those people who are viewing, these are called smoke shops. Let's be very clear about what these are. This is places where they sell drug paraphernalia. They're not selling, this isn't just cigarettes. So some people have said to me, why are you so concerned about smoke shops? Because they're selling drug paraphernalia next to places like dance studios, gymnastics, churches, etc. So anyway, with that, with my little editorial comment, how about churches?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilman Gates. Just to clarify for the record, the exceptions that are in the ordinance that go to 5%, you're absolutely right. Clarify and allow things like the Circle Ks and the Quick Trips of the world to sell the cigarettes behind the counter that they always do. This ordinance really does go after folks that are selling the drug paraphernalia and the larger tobacco-oriented items. And so one of the things we did talk with the law department based upon your comments to me was a separation from churches, and that is something that we could do. We do have a database of churches from the medical marijuana spacing requirements that we'll talk about in a few minutes. The only thing I would say to that, if that was the subcommittee's direction, we would have to ask that you remand it back to the Planning Commission so that we could re-advertise it, put that language in, and then go to at least the Planning Commission, then back to the subcommittee, and then to the full council, because currently that language is not in the ordinance as it sits here today. We would ask the villages, if the chairs, if they wished to hear that as well, but given that it's strengthening it in the interest of time, we would try and see if the chairs would be okay with that, but if they wanted to hear it, that might cause additional delay, just so the subcommittee is aware.
Well, Madam Chair, Mr. Stevenson, thanks for looking into that, and for the record, I certainly would be supportive of adding that additional protection for our neighborhoods. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Nowakowski.
Madam Chair, I just want some clarification on, when you talk about rec centers, does that include like boys and girls clubs and YMCA's, or is it just city rec centers? And if not, can we include rec centers that are geared towards youth? I know that the Boys and Girls Club are geared towards youth. They're not geared towards adults. And then we have the YMCA that also is geared towards youth, and they also have programs for adults too.
Madam Chair, Councilman Nowakowski, that database only reflects the existing city-owned recreational facilities. It does not include boys and girls clubs at this time.
And can we include Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCA's, or is that, would that be legal or not legal?
Madam Chair, Councilman Nowakowski, I think at this time, it's not included. If the subcommittee direction is to include the additional spacing for churches, we can spend some time while we're doing that to figure out, can we get an accurate database of those, and find a way to ensure that as new ones open, we know about it. That's really the challenge, and why it's so difficult when you're talking about the karate schools and those things is they come and go. I do understand that Boys and Girls Clubs are a slightly different nature, and that might be something to look at. So, if the subcommittee wants us to look at the additional church spacing, I think we can spend some time to look at that. And then we also, always when we're doing these spacing requirements, we have to go back and look at maps and talk to the law department, because we can't adopt spacing requirements that effectively zone them out of existence in the city. So we'd have to look at all those things.
Thank you.
And we should also be intentional about when we push them in certain directions where they end up. So they could end up more in industrial areas, but we also have many facilities for at-risk populations, including our homeless population, in industrial areas. And so that's something we need to consider as a balance as well, because we want people who are in recovery to have the best chances possible. And right now, I represent, as does Councilman Nowakowski, areas near the homeless service campus. We are joined by our former colleague Craig Kripp today. But there are many places where it is frankly easier to buy drug paraphernalia than it is to buy a fresh apple. And that's something we ought to consider and think about as we make these decisions, because we do want to create healthy communities, and sometimes our decisions can have consequences as we push those uses. And if anyone wants to help us make good decisions, please fill out a yellow card, which is a request to speak. We have 2 items under A. The special 10 is the special meeting of the Phoenix City Council, and item A10 is request to amend the zoning ordinance related to tobacco, and then item B is medical marijuana zoning. So if you do want to fill out a card, if you could specify if you're interested in speaking on 10A or 10B or both. We do have one card from Brian Hummel of the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, who has filled out a card in favor of the request to amend the zoning ordinance on tobacco. So thank you to our partners at the American Cancer Society for their support of wiping out cancer in our community. And we have a card from Bill Richards in favor of the amendment to create larger setbacks. Bill, would you like to speak on item 10A or B?
Actually, principally on 10B.
Perfect. And we have a card from Ryan Hurley, 10B. Thank you. Does anyone want to speak on the tobacco related? All right. If you could fill out a card when you're done.
I'm
Council-
Brian Hummel. I'm Brian Hummel with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. So if you want me to fill out a yellow one, I can
You do
do
not
that
need to
too.
fill out a
But,
card. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank the council for looking into the issue and looking at tobacco control issues. It's incredibly important. As you may know, we sometimes have some challenges at the state level to move legislation that would help tobacco control. And so I appreciate the council, especially the largest population center in the state, of hopefully setting a precedent for others to make sure that we keep tobacco out of the hands of kids. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your partnership. We have some large high schools in my district right across from stores that sell significant drug paraphernalia. And so it's good that we have the discussion about what is the appropriate land use patterns to keep our young people safe. With that, I think we will move on to item B, medical marijuana zoning regulations.
Councilwoman,
Yes,
may I make a comment?
please.
I'm going to be supportive of this and going to reserve judgment as it wades its way through to the council. But just a couple things. One, in full disclosure, I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. My children are allergic to it. My wife is. She has asthma. But I generally am not supportive of more restrictions on what people would consider a law-abiding use. I do support more restrictions and making it harder for children, and that's what I like about this ordinance here. It makes it harder for youth to be able to get their hands on the tobacco products. But I do have concerns when we start looking at regulating a use that people have already been able to do. Very few people smoke today, and I get the whole cancer part of it. That's why I've never smoked. Well, I take it back. I smoked one cigarette my entire life at 15 years old. Well, actually, after I threw up, I smoked half of it. But at the end of the day, I've been I just don't want us to be so restrictive on what are considered to be illegal uses where law-abiding people literally are, it makes it just tough for them to be able to get products that they already know that they've got a problem with. But I'll be supporting this as it moves forward, but I'm going to reserve judgment until it gets to the council.
Great, thank you. And maybe our planning director could clarify one more time just on availability of cigarette packs versus delivery systems.
So, Madam Chair, members of the special council meeting, this ordinance has 2 exceptions to it. One is an exception for the Circle K's, QTs of the world to have 5% or less of their area devoted to tobacco products. The other one is if you're a large grocery store, I believe the figure is 100,000 square feet or above, then you end up as not having to comply either because you have a significant amount of product, of the retail product as well. So there still will be lots of opportunities for those things to be purchased within the community.
Great, thank you. And with that, we will move on to 10B, medical marijuana zoning regulations.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I also am going to have Tom Remus join us for this one. And we're happy to answer any questions as we move forward on this. So you'll recall back in 2003, the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act was passed. As part of that, it established a zoning scheme where there are dispensaries, which are the retail facilities for medical marijuana. There's cultivation facilities where they're grown, and there are infusion facilities as part of that. The city of Phoenix adopted our regulations prior to the rules being adopted by the Arizona Department of Health Services overall for how zoning would be regulated throughout the state. We were one of the early adopters of our regulations because of what we had seen in California, where they chose, when medical marijuana was adopted there, to not regulate them, believing that the feds would come in. And so we took a very proactive approach at the time, and we established our regulations in 2010. Subsequent to that, when the DHS allowed their rules to come forward, they dispersed the dispensaries throughout the state with a requirement to have one of them within each CHA. A CHA is a community health analysis area. You see on this map up here, this is the different CHAs throughout the entire state of Arizona. As part of the promulgation of the rules by the Arizona Department of Health Services, one of the very last changes that came out was that a dispensary could relocate after 3 years anywhere in the state. And so that 3 years is up, and that's one of the issues that is coming forward now, driving an increase in these types of requests. For the city of Phoenix, you see on this map here, these are the CHAs within our city boundaries. They largely follow the village planning committee areas, but not exactly. One note of difference here is we do show the Tempe CHAs on there in the light gray and dark gray in the corner, just to show them for size and scale related to what we have in the city of Phoenix at our large size. We also show a couple of CHAs that are predominantly in other cities, but we have small portions within our village, with our areas, like the Peoria one up north. With that, I'm going to introduce Teresa Hillner, who's going to talk about the research that staff conducted regarding other regulations throughout the metropolitan region.
Good morning. These are the jurisdictions that we evaluated early on in the process: Flagstaff, Peoria, Surprise. Subsequent to this report being done, we have obtained information from Chandler, Mesa, and Glendale. So we were looking at the zoning regulations regarding separation from medical marijuana facilities. So as you can see, Phoenix has a 5,280-foot separation, that is a mile. Two of the jurisdictions that we studied were 1,500 feet, and then 6 of them were less than 1,500 feet. Chandler, Mesa, and Glendale have replicated the city of Phoenix's ordinance, so they also have the spacing of 5,280 feet. Between medical marijuana facilities and schools, 2 of the jurisdictions, they would be Surprise and Maricopa County, are 1,500 feet, and then 6 of the jurisdictions are less than 1,500. We have 1,320 feet, which is a quarter mile. Chandler and Glendale have replicated our ordinance of 1,320 feet. Mesa has 1,200 feet. Distances between medical marijuana facilities and daycare facilities. 2 of the jurisdictions has 1,500 feet. 5 of the jurisdictions have less than 1,500. 1 jurisdiction has no spacing, and the city of Phoenix has no spacing. Chandler has 1,320 feet. Mesa has only 500 feet for dispensaries, and Glendale has no spacing for daycare facilities. And places of worship. 4 jurisdictions have more than 500 feet. 3 jurisdictions have no spacing at all, and the city of Phoenix has 500 feet. Chandler is 1,320 feet, Glendale has none, and Mesa has 1,200 feet. The city of Phoenix has drawn a distinction between dispensary separation from residential zoning categories and cultivation and infusion from residential zoning categories. Jurisdictions range from 0 to 500 feet for residential from dispensaries. The city of Phoenix has a 250-foot separation from dispensaries and residential uses. The cultivation and infusion to residential, we have 1,000 feet as our spacing requirement, and other jurisdictions have between 0 and 500 feet. Chandler has 1,320 feet. Glendale has similar situations from us. They have the dispensary at 500 feet and cultivation and infusion at 1,320. Any questions?
We're going to,
I think we'll probably do questions
Questions at the
after
end? Okay.
yes, we'll go on. We're going to talk, Sandy's going to walk us through some maps. And so these are just some different scenarios that show as you start making some of these choices on the spacing requirements, what does that do to the areas that are available for these types of facilities? And because the city is a 519 square miles, we broke it up into these northern focus areas and kind of southern focus areas just to try and find some highlights of those areas. But certainly, once we get direction and work on this more, we can come around and talk to you and show the individual maps and how that works. But for presentation purposes, we just have these couple of excerpts to talk about today.
So basically, we have 519 square miles in Phoenix, and when we had that big map up there, you just saw tiny little dots on it. And so that's why, again, we zoomed in on the north area of this Phoenix, and we also will go through the south area as well, where more of the activation is occurring. So the north area was pretty much taken from about 5 miles south of the 101 on up, and you can see the graphic on the screen. What it's showing right there is where dispensaries are allowed, which is in C2, C3, A1, and A2 zoning. It's also showing you that this area meets our current spacing, which is the 5,280 feet from another medical marijuana facility. It's 1,320 feet from any school, city park, or public community center. It's 500 feet from a place of worship and 250 feet from a residential district. So if you can, I'll go back. This is it now. This is it if we change the spacing from residential from 250 to 500. So you can see a little bit of that change. Again, see there, and now 500. So now, though, if we were to go further, and we're going to have the regular requirements plus 500 for residential, increasing worship to 1,320, and adding daycares, which we don't have right now, the space you watch in a blink, it only changes that amount. But the key thing to remember is we can't eliminate every area, again, legally to zone it to the point where they can't do this. So you can see the differences in the spacing from that. So then if we go to the south, so the south area, the dispensaries are allowed again in C2, C3, A1, A2. These are all of them meeting all our spacing requirements. Now, if we were to change the distance from residential from the 250 to 500, blink quickly, there's the change. And then if we were to add on top of that, the distance that you need to have from places of worship increasing as well as adding daycares, you would lose that amount. So that gives you the difference for dispensaries between the north and the south. We also did it for the cultivation and infusion. So in the north, cultivation is allowed in S1, S2, A1, and A2. And the cultivation facilities need to be, again, 5,280 feet from another medical marijuana business. They have to be 1,320 feet from a school, city park, or community center, and 500 feet from a place of worship. But they also have, cultivation has a 1,000-foot limit from the cultivation facility to residential zoning. Infusion basically has the same setbacks as well, but they're only allowed in A1 and A2 zoning. So what you're seeing in the north here is those that meet all of our spacing requirements as well as the zoning districts. So if we changed it to where we included a place of worship, expanding it from 500 feet to 1,320 feet, I'll go back to the original one. See, that was the original. We increased spacing. We lost those. And then if we add additional spacing for places of worship from 500 to 1,320 and adding daycare facilities to 1,320 spacing, That's the change. So again, there's a minimal amount of change, but there is change that occurs. If we go to the south,
We would like to see that, the 2 slides again.
Yeah, 'cause it didn't
okay.
show.
So if we go back to the original, this is the original. We're in the north. Cultivation infusions allowed. You add additional spacing from a worship. You get that. And then you add additional spacing from, let's see, what did we do? Daycare centers. Actually, we did the first one was, yeah, we would do that.
So very minor change.
Very minor. And then we go to the south.
So before you go back to that last slide, Amy. So what you're looking at here is predominantly state land that is up north in the far northern parts of the district. Councilman Waring's very much familiar with that area. It's all zoned S1. It's held by the State Land Department principally. S1 is our large lot, kind of agricultural rural district. And because the zoning ordinance allows medical marijuana facilities to be cultivated in S1 because it's growing, it has to be indoors as opposed to other things that are grown in those agricultural areas within S1. So you do see a lot up here that is eligible, but I don't believe you're going to see that happen with the State Land Department and the way they're set up with the cultivation only. So infusion's not allowed up in this area. And you're not going to get a big change in spacing requirements from some of these types of uses up here because it's principally open desert. So there isn't areas where there's a daycare facility in our database up here to push anything over because there's nothing there.
Thank you.
So existing in the south, again, showing the spacing requirements with, again, cultivation allowed in S1, S2, A1, and A2, and infusion only allowed in A1 and A2. And then if we were to increase the space from worships from 500 feet to 1320, there's a little change. And then if we were to add daycare centers, there's a little bit of a change there as well. So,
We'll turn over to, no, we can turn over to Tom. What you principally see as this comes in is the edges all start to shrink in a little bit. And so it's kind of hard to see on that scale, but you do start seeing the edges all start coming in a little bit as you start adding those spacing requirements to make that larger area, less. And then you have the 1 mile spacing requirement inside of those. So if you get a couple of those ones have facilities in them, it's then more difficult to locate new ones in there because of that 1 mile spacing requirement from other medical marijuana facilities. And now Tom's going to talk about some legislative stuff that's out there right now.
Madam Chair, members of the council, in front of you is House Bill 2618. As you heard from Alan and his team, that within the first 3 years after the state issued this medical marijuana dispensary registration certificates, the dispensary could then move. And so I think there's been a number of conversations being discussed at the state level. There's been a number of conversations at the state level about how to address that. So House Bill 2618 was introduced by Representative Leach. It actually has its first committee hearing tomorrow in House Judiciary at 9:30 a.m. And what this bill does is that after the Department of Health Services issues that registration certificate to a medical marijuana facilities, they may change location of the dispensary or cultivation site only to another location in the same community health analysis area. So what this means is they can't move from another part of the state into the Phoenix area. This issue, though, does have a Prop 105, a Voter Protection Act provision in it, since it is changing the initiative, some believe. And so this would require a 3/4 vote of both chambers in order to get this amendment. We will be bringing this item to you at the next legislative update policy meeting. I've been asked to also talk about the medical marijuana initiative that's currently collecting signatures, the Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. Just some highlights here. This measure, if it did go to the voters and pass, would establish the Department of Marijuana license and control. It creates rules for notifying cities and towns of pending license applications. And it would also allow cities and towns to create their own rules that are not in conflict with the Act, such as limiting the place, times of operation, limiting the number of marijuana establishments, looking at restricting smoking, production, processing, or manufacturing. But one thing to consider, and I know Alan will talk a little bit more about this, is it does allow for the medical marijuana dispensary to reorganize as a recreational dispensary.
Thanks, Tom. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. In this particular instance, I think what is critical to note about this ballot initiative is it does have language in it that says the locality, meaning cities, may prohibit the operation of one or more of the recreational type of marijuana establishments, except that we cannot prohibit a reorganized medical marijuana establishment into a recreational marijuana establishment. So whatever happens with the initiative, we will have the ability to look at zoning requirements related to those facilities if it passes, but we will have, in effect, grandfathered these medical marijuana facilities into that scheme if that passes by the voters. So that's just another thing to talk about as you're contemplating giving us direction on various spacing requirements and what we should do.
Madam Chair, additionally, this measure would impose a luxury tax of 15% on all sales of marijuana and related products. And then those funds would go into the marijuana fund, which has 40% of the luxury tax funds going to school districts and charter schools, 40% going to school districts and charter schools for full-day kindergarten, and 20% going to the Arizona Department of Health Services for public education related to campaigns on the harms of alcohol, marijuana, and other substances. It should be noted here that there's a lot of discussion going on in the taxing and financing community about whether you can collect taxes on these new marijuana sales. It is our understanding at this time that nothing would prohibit the state or any local jurisdiction from imposing our retail TPT on these sales. Additionally, currently, it's our understanding that we do collect retail TPT on medical marijuana. And while that falls under a different category in the Model City Tax Code, there would be discussions that if this initiative were to pass, there could be further definitions in that code.
And I'm chairman of the subcommittee. This is just outlines the next steps here. So staff is currently working on finalizing some text amendment language. Then we go through the law department for ordinance review, then on to the village planning committees, planning commission, back to the subcommittee for a vote on the actual text that would be before you at that time, as well as then city council. And so you see a couple of months there difference, and that just depends on how difficult it is to get through the villages and get things addressed. So we kind of put forward a best case scenario, which goes to council in June, and then kind of a worst case scenario, more of the July, just before you would go on break, to have something back to council on this full issue. With that, staff is recommending that the subcommittee provide us some direction on how you wish to proceed regarding strengthening our medical marijuana zoning ordinance regulations. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and take the cards first, starting with Bill Richards. Yeah, if you could join us at the microphone. I understand we do have people watching us online, so.
Good morning, members of the council. My name is Bill Richards. I am a resident of 9008 North 33rd Way in Phoenix. It's about a mile south of 32nd Street in Shea. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, and also very much appreciate the fact that you are taking on this issue at this time, an issue that is of great concern not just to me but to my neighbors, as we have just come off a fight basically against permitting a dispensary location at 32nd Street in Shea. Just received about 2 weeks ago a favorable vote from the Board of Adjustment denying the permit. I was pleased to get to act as a spokesperson for the neighborhood group at that Board of Adjustment hearing, and I'd like to give you just a bit of a flavor of that. I know my time is limited, but if I could give you first of all a flavor of how many people are concerned. In our neighborhood, which is, again, I think a fairly typical central Phoenix type of neighborhood, we are certainly in transition. It's a great place to live. There's a lot of great recreational opportunities and an awful lot of schools, but in terms of the business environment at that particular intersection, it is in transition. Therefore, we're very concerned about a number of things. And we turned out a very, very large constituency. Councilman Gates, I want to give you special thanks for being such a great conduit of information for the neighborhood. But as you know, we turned out very, very large groups of people at both the original hearing and then the Board of Adjustment hearing. We also submitted, and I'll leave a copy for the council, but we submitted over 800 signatures of neighbors, of business owners, a lot of letters. We were supported in our efforts by the Paradise Valley School District Superintendent, who submitted a letter in opposition, other teachers, educators, principals. We also, and maybe most importantly for this group, we were supported by the City of Phoenix Public Transit Department. The director of the Public Transit Department submitted a protest letter because this particular location was going right next to a large park and ride, the 32nd Street Park and Ride, which is used as a large transportation hub for students that attend schools in our neighborhood. And although our neighborhood is unique, I do think that it gives some helpful context to some of the perhaps not unintended, but the unanticipated consequences of the current zoning regulation. Our neighborhood sits, this particular location, 32nd Street and Shea, sits right in the middle of a zone that has somewhere between 7 and 8 schools, about 3,000 to 4,000 school children attending school every day right in that area, and it surrounds that area. We have public parks like everyone else does, churches nearby, and right next to this particular location, there was on one side, there's a 7-Eleven where the school kids from Shadow Mountain High School use, not every weekend, but many, many weekends, they use that for their fundraising. They have for decades. The business owner's been very accommodating. Right on the other side, there's a full-time martial arts school. Right next to that, there's another full-time martial arts school. Across the street, there's a McDonald's where teenagers hang out. The McDonald's owner objected as well. Just down from that is Arizona Child Psychology, where they serve parents and particularly teens, and they have weekend programs for teens, and they have breaks, and they walk around the neighborhood, and they do things there. Those are just some of the family-oriented and child-oriented activities that are going on right there, in addition to the busing in and out of many students to many of those schools. You know, we have a neighborhood where kids still walk to school, and they still ride their bikes to school and take skateboards to school and those sorts of things. They go right past this facility on a regular basis. And there was a large concern from the neighborhood, particularly the parents and the education community. In addition, we were concerned with the housing values and with business values. And we had a lot of local business owners come out against this, and we had a lot of homeowners come out against it because of real concerns with impacting housing values. As you probably know, 32nd Street and Shea is part of, I see my time is up here. If I could indulge you for just a couple more seconds, we're part of a revitalization plan, and we're very proud of that, and we're very thankful to the city for all that they're doing there. But that's the sort of plan we're concerned gets derailed by putting these sorts of locations in. The last thing I would ask you to consider, we obviously have concerns with the fact that we have a law that potentially may be voted on soon that would allow these businesses to convert to recreational use. Councilman Gates, you talked about the smoke shops and what they're really selling. Well, I'm going to provide again in our packet of the information we gave the Board of Adjustment. You'll see at Exhibit J, we've actually got the menu from the Swell Pharmacy. That's the business that was going to move in our neighborhood in Youngtown. And on the menu just 2 weeks ago were all kinds of products that look like what you would buy at the 7-Eleven next door. They are candy bars. They are snickerdoodles. They are cookies, sugar cookies, chocolate chip or Chiba chip cookies. They are things called clear sour Skittles. All of those type of things. And that's, frankly, you can look at it yourself, but that's a large amount of what the menu there consists of, again, being sold right in the middle of all this traffic with students. So we would ask that you consider, again, the appropriateness of the current regulation, which, by the way, in our case, the applicant claimed they were 5 inches outside the limit. We had a survey done that showed they were actually, we believe, within 2 feet inside the limit, about 2 feet inside. But it doesn't matter. 5 inches, 5 feet, 15 feet, 50 feet don't matter when all of these other issues are implicated, because it wouldn't change a thing in terms of the students that are walking by or waiting for the bus or riding their bicycles by, or the neighborhood housing values and the revitalization plans that might be thwarted or at least delayed significantly by this type of use close by. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if I could, I do have the packet.
Please. Thank you. Ryan Hurley? And I did let that speaker have additional time, so we will do the same, because I think it's important that we have a full debate and hear all sides of perspective. We are making important decisions today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council and staff. I appreciate that. I will try to be brief, though. My name is Ryan Hurley. I'm an attorney for the Rose Law Group. I'm here today on behalf of licensed medical marijuana dispensaries and growers. I've had the great pleasure of representing these folks for the last 5 years. I want to state at the outset that nobody's selling medical marijuana to kids. These are licensed patients. This is a legal use in the state of Arizona. In order to even get into a facility, you have to have a state-issued card, and that is similar to a driver's license as far as its quality of ID. So, my hope is that the city will look at this and treat this like any other legal use. My belief is that it should be treated no differently than a Walgreens. So these sorts of pharmacies are dispensing drugs that are far more dangerous, and I believe that the Arizona medical marijuana patients deserve to be treated equally. I can understand the council and some folks' concerns about the number of dispensaries that are relocating into Arizona. I am into Phoenix, into the greater Phoenix area. I'm not here today to primarily talk about that. What I would like to talk about is the sort of unintended consequences of the dispensary and the cultivation zoning ordinance. I'll give a little bit of a brief perspective and history from the industry and from my perspective. I applaud the city from going out and taking a really proactive approach to trying to regulate these. This was done in a great deal of a vacuum. This was the first attempt to regulate in Arizona. And so I applaud the city for doing that, and largely I believe the city has done an excellent job at it, more reasonable than a lot of cities here in Arizona. What we can see, though, is that the ordinance and the city's regulations were passed prior to the Department of Health Services regulations. At that time, nobody really knew how the program was going to shake out. Nobody knew that the CHAW system was going to be in place. Nobody knew that dispensaries were going to be required to open, but not necessarily be required to have a cultivation site. And nobody knew that that cultivation site could be located elsewhere in the state and not within the same CHAW as the dispensary. So I think we saw a number of unintended consequences, and one of the ones I would specifically like to bring up is the separation requirement between cultivation facilities and infusion facilities of 1 mile from another medical marijuana use. So the city adopted a zoning ordinance that put cultivation and infusion largely in industrial areas. And I believe that was an appropriate decision, as these uses largely require a huge amount of power, large amount of security, and are well designed for industrial types of buildings. One of the things I do want to note is that those maps, I believe, are a little bit misleading, because there has not been a single request, to my knowledge, of anybody asking for a medical marijuana use on an S1 or an S2 use. It's just simply not practical. These uses need large-scale industrial buildings with high security and a large power load. So they are well suited for industrial areas of the city. So I believe that was a wise choice. The city required these separation requirements, moved these cultivation and infusion facilities into A1 and A2 zoning, but then required 1 mile separation from all other medical marijuana uses. So that essentially meant that only the person that got in line first, and the city adopted this pre-registration requirement. Before you even got a use permit, you had to go and pre-register with the city for your site. That was a requirement that, to my knowledge, is not imposed on any other use in the entire city. So it set up this situation where you could go pre-register a site but not activate it, and then if you came in second and you had to go get a use permit, you were required to then get a variance from that other cultivation facility, even if it wasn't active, even if it was just pre-registered. So we had a situation where it was essentially possible to go in, pre-register a site, and prohibit anybody else from coming in and doing a cultivation site. So because of that, I believe that the city rightfully, in a number of zoning adjustment hearings, decided to grant variances for cultivation and infusion facilities. These variances looked a number of different ways. The first being if there was an active dispensary at the site and this dispensary was an A1 or A2, it made sense to then allow a cultivation site at that same location. And then it was, well, if there's other pre-registered sites and they're not active, then it makes sense to allow that. And then the city recognized that there really only are a handful of areas in the entire city that meet the qualifications, both of the city's ordinance and from the industry's perspective of what the building is required. So there are a number of areas where there are a number of cultivation facilities. The Deer Valley Air Park, I-17 and I-10 interchange near the airport, and then also on the west side, where there are a number of cultivation facilities that have variances between them. My hope is that as you proceed during this process, that you will look at that and recognize that there is no need for a 1 mile separation separation distance from cultivation facilities. These uses are not open to the public. They are allowed they are only accessible by employees. There is no signage, and to my knowledge, there's not been a single complaint on any of the active use permits in the city, as far as I know. So the only possible concern would be odor, and largely people have shown that that is able to be addressed not only, number one, through the use permit process, which is a requirement to get a use permit, but also through technology such as ozone filtration and carbon neutralization. Odor really isn't a concern if it's actively managed. So there really is no real justification requiring separation distance between cultivation sites. I can understand the concern on dispensaries, and if the council wants to move forward with that, I get that. But I will note that the separation requirement of 1 mile is both for dispensaries but especially for cultivation facilities is far greater than any other city in the metro area. So my hope is that the council will address that. I believe that because these are already directed towards A1, A2 uses and require separation of a quarter mile from schools, churches, and other medical marijuana uses, that I believe for cultivation you can also reduce the residential separation requirement down to 500. Practically speaking, there are no residences in these areas anyway. They are in A1 and A2 zoning areas. But even if they are subject to far more intense uses that do not require a use permit. Again, these uses, once they're there, nobody even really knows that they're there. And we haven't, to my knowledge, had a single complaint of any licensed facility in Arizona. So I want to make sure that that the needs and the interests of both the industry and Arizona's patients are addressed as part of this. I want to make sure that we're not trying to find a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And I'm hopeful that we can reconcile some of the inconsistencies that have been addressed by variances through this process, so we can eliminate the inconsistencies between businesses and the need for variances. That's all I have. As I've been in this industry for 5 years, I've been through a number of these zoning hearings. I'm happy to answer any questions, provide an industry perspective, a patient perspective, or a historical perspective.
I think I do have a few questions for
Yes.
you. As you were speaking, it made me think, if the ballot initiative were to be successful, will cultivation facilities have preference to become recreational facilities, or is that only dispensaries?
So currently, under the existing program, the dispensaries and the cultivation facilities are actually unified under one license. So the license gives them the ability to do both. So they're not really separate users. Now, the owner of the property may be a different person, but at the end of the day, the licensee is the same person. Under the adult use initiative, if it were to pass, and it will be on the ballot in November, if it were to pass, that business would be granted both a dispensary and a cultivation permit and a infusion permit and a distribution permit in the same locality.
Then, to me, land use you'd have different land uses that would make sense for facilities where you might have recreational use. And so we should consider that when we consider locations for cultivation.
I think that the areas for cultivation under both were similar. I mean, they're a similar type of use. So certainly, keeping this in mind as you go forward, keeping the adult use initiative in mind as you go forward is important. But I think from a cultivation perspective, these uses go in industrial areas anyway, and they're going to go there whether they're growing for patients or whether they're growing for adults 21 and over.
And then could you help us understand on the tax implication side, a cultivation facility would pay property tax?
Correct.
If we had a cultivation facility, say near the border of Tempe, and the products were sold primarily in Tempe, could you explain the TPT revenue, where it would go?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the tax under the adult use initiative will be placed at the end of use at the retail side. So it is an ordinary sales tax, much like you would have a manufacturer in the city. If they sold their products in Tempe, as on a wholesale basis to the retailer in Tempe, they would not be subject to TPT until the end of the use.
And it's my understanding with Tempe's current plans, there will not be any future cultivation facilities coming to Tempe.
No, that's incorrect. To my knowledge, that Tempe has limited the number of dispensaries, but actually reduced the restrictions on cultivation facilities. They had a separation distance between cultivation facilities and other medical marijuana uses similar to the cities, and they recognized that that wasn't really addressing any actual problem. So while they did limit the number of dispensaries, they reduced that separation. In fact, they eliminated that separation requirement from cultivation facilities to other medical marijuana uses.
But if the campaign were to be successful on the ballot initiative, those cultivation facilities could become facilities where people use the product recreationally?
No. They would
be-
not be dispensaries. They would still, and again, the city would have to come back and draft another ordinance for adult use. So it's not like this, but no, those would only be, what they're talking about, the grandfather, those would only be a concern for retail dispensaries. A cultivation site could not all of a sudden become a retail dispensary.
Wonderful, thank you. I just hadn't considered what would be the impact on cultivation facilities until you were speaking, so hadn't read it with that purpose in mind, but I do think there is a good chance this initiative will pass, and so we ought to consider that as we make decisions here today. Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Yes, Councilman Gates. Okay. Wonderful, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Jeff Taylor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is Jeff Taylor, and I represent the Salvation Army. And we don't really have positions on these types of things. We're kind of in the middle of the road. But one thing that we do is come down and share our expertise whenever we can so you can make a more informed decision. A couple of things that we haven't talked about today, and there's been a lot of information shared, and I'm going to plagiarize an article that I just found from Denver, and it was a study done by the University of Colorado. Though technically medical marijuana dispensaries provide a healthcare service, they have historically been required to adopt the same zoning restrictions as businesses that sell alcohol, pornography, and firearms. Generally, these stores sell these types of vices are prohibited from locating in residential or mixed-use neighborhoods and are pushed to much less affluent neighborhoods. Well, that kind of brings them into our neighborhoods. So we serve people at or below the poverty level. We provide more human services than any other organization in the state or in the country, for that matter. So we have after-school programs, we have nurseries, we have churches, and we also have residential drug treatment facilities that are usually in areas that maybe a cultivation operation would be, or dispensaries. So, our motto really is you can get sober anywhere. Drugs are pretty much everywhere. And in just kind of touching on Councilman Gates on your comment about the smoke shops, is that they are not just benign smoke shops. They're not only selling drug paraphernalia, they are selling crack pipes, things to smoke heroin, methamphetamine pipes, things like that. So when you have an attractor like that, then you have drug deals being done in that immediate area also. So we're just here to try to help out the council in any way that we can. One thing that hasn't been touched on today, which I find very interesting, and I'm going to kind of take off my social services hat and go back to my prior career, which was on Wall Street, and that is that federally marijuana is against the law. And maybe Mr. Hurley, you may know a lot more about this than I do, but that means that you cannot use the federal banking system for this. You cannot use credit cards for this, which means from the cultivation to delivery of product to moving cash around, you are moving around our community in Colorado. It just reached over $100 million per month. Now, that's after medical marijuana and the legalization was approved. And if it is approved, as Madam Chair, you probably are right, it has a pretty good chance of passing the ballot initiative. That's $100 million in cash that we're moving around neighborhoods. If we push cultivation to outlying areas and isolated areas, that's a public safety issue for our first responders. You don't have a lot of police maybe in that area. So it's just something to consider, that you're moving around a very valuable product and you're moving around a lot of cash. So how does that work out in zoning? I'm not sure, but it's something to consider, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Wonderful. So in terms of spacing requirements from social services facilities, just anything in particular that you would advise us?
Well, I know that we have one of the largest facilities in the state. We have a 157,000 square foot facility that is along Broadway and 14th Street. It's the Kroc Center, and it's really designed to get people, get mainly our young people off the streets, out of school, come in with their families where they can reunite at night. We have all sorts of sports activities there. So having a dispensary in that neighborhood wouldn't be the greatest, area to put something like this in. But once again, we don't really take a position. We treat all those that show up at our doorstep. One thing, that I do know about marijuana is that it does lead to other drugs. Most everybody in our residential drug treatment facilities all started with marijuana, and then it's moved on to other more what we call crime-producing behaviors and narcotics. But that's why we're there.
Wonderful.
All
Thank
right.
you for joining us today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We have a card from William Richards. It does not have an item number. William Richards would like to. Oh, the Bill and the William. That's okay. It's perhaps someone else. Thank you. That is all of our cards. Councilman Gates, you had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was first of all, thanks to all the speakers, all very, got a lot of great insights from it, so I appreciate everyone taking the time. And again, thank you, Madam Chair, for putting this issue on subcommittee. I think as the presentation established, this is a huge issue that we need to address sooner rather than later. There was reference made to Tempe that they've limited the dispensaries. Can you give us some insight on that?
Madam Chair, Councilman Gates, it's our understanding the city of Tempe recently enacted an ordinance that limits dispensaries to one per CHA. And you recall from that slide we showed, there's 2 CHAs in the city of Tempe. They did not apply that same limit to their cultivation or infusion facilities. As part of that, they did make some accommodations when they tightened up the dispensary component of it. That is something that staff will be looking at as well as part of this.
And Madam Chair, a follow up on that, and if the answer is we're still looking at, we don't know the answer. If Phoenix were to adopt that 1 per CHA, would that mean that to the extent, or maybe the village, whatever the council thought was appropriate, would that mean then that if it has a dispensary already post the effective date of that change, they couldn't have any more? Would it mean one more in that CHA or village after the ordinance was adopted?
Well, Madam Chair, Councilman Gates, it would depend on how it's written once it comes forward. I think in the Tempe legislation, it was 1 per their existing scheme, which has them at 1 per CHA. That is something that in prior discussions with the law department, they have had concerns about how we address the need to provide zoning for these types of things. So we'd have to work through that issue, and certainly we can come back around, and I think judging by the amount of questions and concerns this issue has raised, we'll come back around with the law department and with others in the city and talk with each of you, I think individually, about this in a more holistic manner where we can provide some information on banking and other kinds of things so that everyone's aware of how that works as we develop this language as well. We can address that specifically at that time.
And Madam Chair, I appreciate the concern about the legalities. I'm inclined to do my best Jim Waring and say, the Tempe lawyer said it was okay, so, but I won't. But it's pretty appealing. Look, I think that it is so important that we move very quickly on this issue because, I mean, this could not have been clearer to me anyway. This initiative, which our chair, and I respect her view on a lot of things, including political issues, she thinks it's probably going to pass. And that initiative says that if you have a medical marijuana dispensary, we as a city cannot stop it turning into an adult use facility. I think that was the first time I've heard that term, so I'll use that. So that means to me that we need to stop this as soon as we can, take a pause and say, because if this thing passes, we have no control. Now, I appreciate the initiative says that the city would have control on future dispensaries. So I mean, it couldn't be any clearer to me that we need to move as quickly as possible, and this should not be drugged down into, well, we're going to go visit, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but we need to move very quickly on this and to put a pause. There's too much at risk and too much at issue here. And finally, I just want to thank Mr. Richards for all his work and his presentation here today. Thank you.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Madam Chair, I agree with Councilmember Gates 100%. I represent most of South Phoenix and the west side, so does Madam Chair. And we've had, just in my district alone, about 6 requests within the last month, and many more are coming. I feel that we have a lot of low-income areas. Our high school rate is way below average, and putting this into these types of neighborhoods just doesn't really help out the image of the neighborhood or the students out there. One of the things that was alarming to me is that things that they need is power and high security. If you need high security, something tells me that you need high security also for the communities surrounding these facilities. With this luxury tax, I'm hearing that 40% is going to schools, another 40% is going to Head Start, another 20% is going to health services to educate people and and actually go out into the community to talk about the product itself. My concern is that there's nothing in this luxury tax talking about how we're going to secure the neighborhoods, the impact it's going to have on the neighborhoods, the value of the businesses surrounding these businesses are going to be affected, even the house values, hearing from the testimony from the individuals that were coming from the Shape Boulevard area, that the impact on their values of homes and businesses. So my concern is we need to really stop it now before it starts to grow. I think it's, my concern is the whole, there's nothing in this, if this does pass, there's nothing in there about securing of those neighborhoods that these businesses are going to be in. I think that we talked about maybe a possible TPT revenue on top of that for retail. If we do that, I think we need to work really close with our police department to figure out what type of security we're going to need, or added police officers that we're going to need for those businesses and those communities in that area. So those are the concerns that I have, and I'm asking the subcommittee to really put in some type of emergency clause that we can actually make this happen sooner than later, because it's something that's already affecting my district with 6 requests, and I'm pretty sure, Madam Chair, you probably have the same amount being requested for your area, and we need to really think wisely. So thank you for allowing us to be here and to voice our opinion.
Wonderful, thank you. I do agree. And I do think we need to think about recreational facilities might have different land use implications than medical marijuana dispensaries, but it appears likely that there may be a transition from medical facilities to recreational. Councilman Waring.
Thank you. So let me ask this. So how many facilities, medical marijuana dispensaries, are there citywide right now that are already operating?
Good morning. There are 32 active medical marijuana uses. That will include dispensaries, cultivation, and infusion sites.
Let me go back, because because it's a lot of verbiage, so all of those could become recreational if the ballot measure passes? Is that?
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, the way I read the proposed initiative, it says, I take it to be that if you're a dispensary, you get to be a dispensary under the new initiative.
If you're a
Not that-
dispensary, you get to be a recreational.
You get to be a recreational dispensary, not that you get to convert from a cultivation to a dispensary. But this isn't something that we've had a lot of time with the law department to get input from them on. We'll make sure that we thoroughly vet that answer so that I can
I mean, that's something I
provide
think
clarity.
voters would certainly want to know. I don't know if they realize what they're signing up for, but
Absolutely.
that's
We
not
would,
your
we
job to
would,
get that word out.
no, but we would want to know as part of me making a recommendation to you guys about the spacing.
So, I'm sorry, so it's 32 dispensaries citywide?
So
That's all of them. So how many then, when we break it down, could become recreational?
There are
There-
14 dispensaries within the.
14 dispensaries, so 14 at this point. How many are in the pipeline? Because Michael's talking about 6 in his area.
I believe the majority of ones in District 7 are cultivation infusion. Each of, if you go back to the CHA map that we had, we have 15 CHAs that are fully in the city of Phoenix. Of those 15, there are dispensaries in 14 of them already, based upon that one per CHA.
There are
So
14 now.
there are 14 now.
How many applications ongoing right now are there for just the dispensaries that could then, if this passed, become recreational?
I don't have an answer for you. I don't know how many are coming in.
I guess under the ballot language, what's their deadline? So going forward, after the thing, if the thing passes, as Councilman Gallego suggested, if the thing passes, after that, then we'd get to act on whether they're recreational or dispensaries. Is that right?
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, yes, we would get to enact zoning regulations regarding recreational marijuana uses, but we have to grandfather these medical marijuana ones in.
So they have every incentive to get in sort of under the wire now, so they don't have to deal with us going forward. What's the is it January 1st? What's the deadline for them to get in under the wire? Is it before the election? Is it sometime next year?
Madam,
Good thing to know.
Yeah. Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, there's a date in the bill that I believe is January of next year if it passes, and then we would have to write the rules that they would then have to try and beat. So similar to what we're doing now, we would have to come forward with a text amendment that would say these types of recreational marijuana uses, here's the zoning districts they would be allowed, here's their requirements.
I'm guessing that most of us would like to be ready January 1st.
Yes.
So, and they're going to try to get in and have their thing up and operating by December 31st, I would assume. It's what I'd do if I was them. So I do think there's going to be a lot of pushback, to say the least, in neighborhoods when people realize these are now recreational things. The smoke shops, as Bill mentioned, frankly, are bad enough. I've had complaints about gas stations. If you look at some of the products that are sold there and what they could be used for, not a fan. And some of it's fairly close to school. I think we've discussed this, although it's been a few years since I've had one of those complaints. It's not an ideal situation. So the quicker we get on it, the better. I think, frankly, the tougher the rules we can come up with, the sooner we can come up with them that fit within the framework of existing law. That's what we want to do, at least to my mind.
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, we will make sure that, first off, get you the information regarding how many dispensaries are in the pipeline. I know 3 of them were
And
denied.
locations too, citywide, not just my district.
Yeah, we'll get that information and provide that to the council. And, we'll also make sure that we get back to you and move this text amendment forward as quickly as possible to address the issues and schedule it sooner rather than later to get through this process, knowing that the concern I'm hearing from all of you is time is of the essence, and we'll make sure that's a department priority to bring back to you.
Thank you.
And as we move forward and consult with the villages, there's some new categories that are contemplated in the ballot initiative, like marijuana testing facility, and it would be helpful to get their perspective on the appropriate land uses for those categories as well. It's my understanding right now we don't have the same categories that are contemplated in the initiative. And
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, you're correct. We will, I think, kind of break this out into twofold. One will be trying to get our medical marijuana requirements strengthened as quick as possible. I think the other avenue will be to solicit some input, kind of like this, from the village planning committees about the initiative language so that we can be teed up and ready to go if it becomes law. We'll at least know what they think related to that larger issue. So then that way we can use that information to inform the council as we develop our language for recreational marijuana.
wonderful. And everyone on my left has won more elections than I, so you all should feel free to share whether you think it is going to pass or not. I just think as we contemplate these new rules, we ought to have a discussion and make sure that people understand what are our options and that we make land use decisions that will be responsible regardless of the outcome. Wonderful. Councilman Nowakowski.
Madam Chair, there is a concern that I have is that you can't actually put the money in the bank, so where are people storing the income from this business? And how is it secured? Is there...
Madam Chair, Councilman Nowakowski, perhaps Mr. Hurley can...
That's what I was thinking.
No one has told me where they're keeping their cash related to these.
And I did have a chance to consult with the police department, and they did agree with Mr. Hurley's earlier statement that we have not had a problem yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilmember Nowakowski. It is not entirely true that banks cannot work with this industry. Similar to the memorandum that the Obama administration issued regarding Colorado and Washington's laws to regulate adult use dispensaries, they also, in conjunction with FinCEN and Department of Justice and Treasury, issued a guidance to banks that said, if you follow these priorities, these federal priorities, you are allowed to work with the industry. So there are a number of dispensaries that have been able to locate bank accounts here in Arizona. It has been a challenge. Usually they are more community-minded banks than they are national chains. There are still a number of dispensaries that do most of the majority of their business in cash. They tend to pay everyone that they can in cash, including taxes and utilities. They do not store anything on site because of the security risk for that. So any cash ultimately is usually taken away by an armored car and stored in a secure facility that is designed for such an instance. So nobody that I know either stores large amounts of product or cash at their dispensary location overnight. So I appreciate the security concerns, but I do think it is instructive that the police department isn't here calling for this, for example.
Okay. Do you have a question for Ryan or? Excellent. Councilman Gates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to respond to Councilman Waring's question, we had a medical marijuana dispensary that has been approved at 19th Avenue in Bell, right?
Yes.
We have medical marijuana dispensary that you heard Mr. Richards speak about passionately that was approved at 32nd Street in Shea, and only because 800 people came out did the Board of Adjustment overturn that approval. We had another medical marijuana dispensary approved at Cave Creek and Cactus. And I believe there's one, it's just outside of District 3, Bell and 25th Street or something like that. So this isn't just, to your point, this isn't just, infusion and cultivation. These are dispensaries that, again, under this initiative would automatically become adult use. Into the legal point, we have raised this issue with the AG's office. So I would recommend that the city attorney, if he hasn't already, talk to them. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Attorney General here, but I know they've looked at it very closely, and I believe they have comfort level with the city enforcing and adopting more restrictions on this. But I've asked them to look at this, and I know that they have been looking at it. And then finally, my question is, is the subcommittee in the position today where if they wanted to, they could vote in favor of a variety of things, something other than what's been presented here? Could they vote for one dispensary per CHA, or could they vote for a moratorium on dispensaries for the time being?
Madam Chair, Councilman Gates, this item is not on for overall action by the subcommittee. It is on to provide input on what the subcommittee would like us to address as part of developing that text amendment. Much like the smoke shop one that just came forward for tobacco-oriented retailers, we have to develop the actual language, advertise that to the public, go through the process. This is very early on in that same process to get additional input. So any of the things that the subcommittee would like us to look at, staff is happy to take that direction and then use that to help develop our text amendment. And if it's something we can't do, we will provide information as to why that can't be done. So that way the council at least knows where staff is at so we can move forward as quickly as possible.
Madam Chair, could this subcommittee and then the full council vote simply on a moratorium without going through the process that obviously goes along with the text amendment of going to the villages, planning commission, etc.?
Madam Chair, Councilman Gates, I have talked about a moratorium with the law department. They do not believe that a moratorium is legally enforceable regarding this type of application. It was asked for in the city of Scottsdale, but it was not something that the Scottsdale attorneys could advise the council they could do either. They did agree to bring something back as quickly as possible, but there was no moratorium granted in Scottsdale. In the state of Arizona, moratoriums are really significant health safety issues, like if you approve this subdivision, there's not going to be water that will be there for it, those types of issues.
Okay, and when was the time frame in Scottsdale? When did this occur?
I believe Scottsdale occurred earlier in January sometime. They had a discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I guess since Ryan made the mistake of sitting near the microphone, I have one more question for you. Could you describe to us what we might expect to happen at an adult use facility and what you would recommend would we treat it like a bar, or how, from a land use perspective, what's the responsible?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, council members and staff. The text of the initiative, the title of the initiative is the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol. Frankly, we believe that it should be treated like a bar or a liquor store, almost identically. There really simply is no justification to do anything more intense than that. In fact, the impacts from those types of uses are far greater than would likely be seen from a dispensary, because there's no on-site consumption allowed. So this is really more akin to a packaged liquor store where somebody would go pick up their product and take it home. I've been privy to a number of studies that have been done that I've submitted at zoning hearing adjustment, and that I'll be happy to share after this meeting with the committee, that show that at least from a medical marijuana dispensary perspective, that the impacts are no greater than a coffee shop, and that in fact crime does not increase around these uses. In fact, the added security tends to decrease crime. So there have been a number of studies of people looking for impacts and for higher regulation, and the studies just don't simply bear that out. So as far as a medical dispensary, we believe that we should be treated just like a Walgreens or a pharmacy. From a adult use perspective, I do believe a packaged liquor store is the appropriate analogy.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. With that, I think we will, do we have any final questions before we close the special meeting and move back to subcommittee? All right, I will now adjourn the special meeting of the City Council. Thank you to the non-subcommittee members who joined us. We will now continue the subcommittee meeting with a discussion on item 11 and possible action. Item 11 pertains to the tobacco uses and zoning regulations. I would entertain a motion to accept staff's recommendation unless anyone would like.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, by way of just refreshing our memories on this issue, there are really three options for the subcommittee to decide. One would be to recommend the full city council approve the text as presented by staff which is what's gone through the process today as outlined by Ms. Hoffman. Councilman Gates requested that we look at a 500 feet spacing from churches. So that would be a motion to remand it back to the Planning Commission to include that spacing requirement. If the subcommittee was inclined, the other option would be to deny the text amendment as presented.
Wonderful. And could we move forward as recommended, but also ask the Planning Commission, or would you prefer that we only do this once?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, it would probably be quicker overall if we just went back to the Planning Commission with the additional requirement to include the spacing from churches. And then we would just seek to let all the village planning committee chairs know that this was at the direction of the council subcommittee, and then try and bring it back, quicker, as opposed to completely starting over with a separate text amendment. I've got a feeling we're going to be very busy with marijuana issues here.
We are getting our money's worth out of our unpaid village planning commissioners, that's for sure. Colleagues, what would you like to send it back, or?
Alan, Alan, if you can repeat that, send it back to the planning commission with the change in distance between churches?
Right, request that staff add a provision for a 500 feet spacing requirement from churches.
And what is it currently?
Currently,
Well, we want to go 1320, we're going to be consistent with the other uses?
well, I guess what I would say is the motion should probably be just to request staff to add a spacing requirement for, from a tobacco-oriented retailer and churches. And staff will look at, based upon the maps and making sure we have enough areas for these to locate, whether or not that would be 500 feet, a quarter mile, 250. We have to make sure that we legally have places for them to locate, but staff will look at anywhere between that 500 feet to 1,320.
And currently, there's nothing?
Currently, there's nothing from churches.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to do something about that. Okay. But so you're saying just to keep that open-ended so that staff can actually go back and make a recommendation?
Correct, Madam Chair, Vice Mayor. Without putting that on a map and seeing how it lays out, because you're now talking about 500 feet from any church, a quarter mile from any school facility, those other establishments, and 500 feet from other smoke shops, it becomes where can you locate? And so if it's a quarter mile from a church, it may be that there's very few places where they could locate, and we'd have some legal challenges if that was the rules that were adopted by council. So that's why that flexibility would help us, reduce that number if that's the case. If it's not, and we still believe there's plenty of room for them to locate, we'll come back with the quarter mile.
Okay. I think Laura has something.
I have a question regarding public recreation centers. So we will include the Croc, Girls and Boys Club, all those.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, so if that is something that's part of the motion, I think staff will look at that.
Okay.
I can't say for sure that, yes, we can do that, because we need to figure out, can we get a good database for that so that we don't make errors and permit these establishments and then find out there's something there. So like the Boys and Girls Club, some of those other ones, I think we could probably get a good database. We need to research that. So if that's the subcommittee's wishes, include that as part of it, and then staff will do the research and then come forward with what we can include.
Okay. So could we include that in a motion, whoever's making the motion?
I guess my sense is it will be probably quite difficult to do family daycares in that, so maybe we could restrict that to larger, at least in my district, there are daycares at people's homes, and it would be hard to require staff to find a full it just doesn't seem realistic that we could.
Correct, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So we do have an existing daycare spacing requirement, but that is larger daycares that are registered with the state of Arizona. It doesn't include people who run like a small daycare out of their house type of facility and some of those ones, because we don't know where those ones are located. So I understand the subcommittee's direction. I think is to try and add some type of boys and girls clubs, the Croc Center, something where we know they're physically located, and see if we can add that to the recreation center database. And so we'll go back and see what we can do related to that. I just, without knowing what we can get, I can't commit to that exactly, but we'll definitely find out and then come back to the subcommittee.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's a little confusing because if I were reading it and it states public recreation centers, I wouldn't know you're talking about city recreation centers. So that's why it's a little confusing. You're going to have to then narrow it down because someone just reading it would be, okay, well, Girls and Boys Club is a recreation center. So we'll have to look at that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Council Wester. We'll do that as part of this effort as well.
Do we need a motion if we're just asking you to study it further, or do you have the direction you need without a motion?
Madam Chair, I think we have the direction that we needed. We'll come back with the reworked text amendment, and then the subcommittee can make a recommendation to council on that one, but I think we're good.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Item 12 is medical marijuana zoning regulations. I think you may also already have significant direction already, but it sounds like we've heard that we do want to go to the village planning commissions and discuss the existing program and also inform them of a potential future change should we have adult use facilities.
Yes, Madam Chair, I certainly heard that loud and clear. My recommendation would be to, if the subcommittee is okay, to do that in two parts so that we can be quick about medical marijuana changes and focus on those right now. And then once that gets onto the Planning Commission and City Council Subcommittee, we can have a discussion with the villages about the recreational or adult use one, whatever you wish to call that one, so that we don't confuse the issue and spend more time trying to come up with the complete overall one that may or may not be necessary depending on what happens with the initiative, and we lose time on the medical marijuana.
Okay, I think we did hear from Councilman Waring that he wants the commissioners to at least consider the possibility of recreational facilities, because you would treat a Walgreens differently than you would treat a bar.
Absolutely, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We'll make sure that staff informs them of the possibility of the initiative and what that language says that we put up on there. But in terms of getting a preference from them regarding the, the testing, marijuana testing facilities and some of those things, that's kind of the discussion that I think we should have subsequent to focusing on the medical marijuana one. But we'll make sure they're informed about the possibility.
I think that makes sense. Anything additional from my colleagues?
No.
All right. Well, thank you. Planning Department has been hard at work at today's subcommittee and full special council meeting. Thank you for your research on this. We are going into uncharted territories, but at least we're going out and informed. So thank you for your work on the issue. We have no cards from call to the public. Future agenda items. With that, we are adjourned.